And now, here's your host of Shaping Success, Wes Tankersley.
All right, let's try this again. Hey, I am Wes Tankersley. I'm your host of Shaping Success. On this episode, we have an awesome guest. His name is Ryan Slate. Before we get to that, just want to do a little cleanup here, a little bookkeeping. Just let you know that we just hit 20K on TikTok, and we're putting out a lot of merchandise. We have some stickers, some shirts, some things like that. If you're interested in getting some of that stuff, hit me up. The links will be in the show notes. I really appreciate you being here and looking forward to this growing more and more. Hope that you are having an awesome day. And with that, here is Jeremy. What's happening, man?
Man, thanks for having me here. Stoked to hang out today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I know we talked a little bit beforehand, but you know, this is kind of an organic conversation that I like to have with people and how they kind of chase their dreams. I listened to a little bit of an episode of maybe about 5 minutes of an episode of a podcast that you were on, and just know that for some reason I always end up talking to people who, you know, kind of are on the same path as me and kind of think, you know, that what, you know, success is generated by you, and you decide and define what that is. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So when I was 13 years old, I looked in a mirror 7 times a day and told myself I was going to be successful. And that's all it took. That was it. I was done. No, that's BS. No, like, I don't know, man. Like, I didn't really know like what I wanted to do with my life. You know what I mean? I come from 2 parents that my dad didn't finish high school and actually went back and got his GED later. And he's one of the hardest working individuals I've ever met in my life. And, you know, I've learned a lot of my work ethic from him. My mom had a full ride for architecture to college and ended up not going because her dad was suffering for cancer her junior and senior year. And she ended up having to raise her brother. So she didn't go to college. So it was, I come from 2 really, really hardworking people that had to make a lot of sacrifices. So I knew how to work hard. I didn't know that, like, you know, there was anything more than that, right? Like, I don't remember my dad making more than $40,000 until I was like in 8th grade. So I learned how to work hard. I always learned that money was scarce. There wasn't much out of it. You can't find it. You got to claw to get it. And if you could make $100,000, that was kind of the be all end all. So, you know, of course, then I was looking for jobs where I could make $100,000. So like, because that was what you do, man. Right. So I ended up going to college for a degree in Catholic theology. Don't even get me started. And then I actually studied literature at Oxford University, came back and got my master's in ancient history. Once again, like, these are not very applicable things, and I would not recommend people do these unless they like want to have some fun in their spare time. And I came back and I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Okay, maybe I'll join the state police. Yeah, the state police makes $100,000 a year. Oh, wow. I do not have the makeup to do that job. So, okay, let me try being a teacher. Okay, teachers do well. Oh, no, they don't. They make like 18 grand. So I was like miserable teaching high school for a couple years. And this school had just gotten rid of like grades. They got rid of grades. So like, you know, like, we all win. It's all fine as long as we play. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. And so like, you had no classroom management, like projectiles were flying across the room. And this is like a Catholic school that people are paying like, you know, $15,000 for kids to go there. This is crazy. And I burned out really quickly. In 2012, my mom ended up having a bad stroke, and it made me look at like what I'm doing in my life. I'm like, Jesus, do I want to do this for another 40 years? And the answer was no. I didn't know what the answer was. So I tried just about anything. I quit my job on a whim with no plan. And I tried network marketing. I tried in-home personal training. I tried door-to-door sales. What else did I do? I did life insurance. I sold products on Amazon. I built websites, and eventually I ended up working at a friend's marketing firm, started a podcast as a hobby that absolutely took off, and really just led me to everything I'm doing now, which is kind of wild, man, because as I said, it has nothing to do with kind of my education, my background, other than like, I've loved this platform since like, you know, 2007 as a listener, and it's taken off for me personally.
So essentially you have your own brand, right? That you're marketing, and it came from just from podcasting. Is that pretty much where it came from?
Yeah. Because like I started the Create Your Own Life podcast back in 2015, and that the idea wasn't like I sat down and like thought of what my perfect avatar was and like designed this title for them. It was literally like, I'm talking to my dad. I just quit my job, and I was actually mowing his lawn for him because I literally had nothing better to do. And he goes, "Well, what's the plan, son?" I'm like, "I don't know, Dad. I want to create my own life." And he's like, "Good luck, buddy." And that's kind of where the title came from, because I held on to that, and it's kind of still that funny joke between us. But we had 10,000 listens in our first month, and what ended up happening is a lot of these people that thought I was crazy from all these years I was trying to make all these different things go right were like, oh, okay, he's onto something now. What is this? And I started getting asked for help by like small business owners. So we actually started an agency that produced podcasts for people. And one of the things we did before producing the podcast, or getting the podcast out there, was putting people on other shows as kind of like a, hey, there's this podcast exists. I'm going to do an interview. You should go back and check out my podcast. And we put together some great shows for people. But what we found is our clients were really interested in just going on other shows and building their brand that way. So we've focused on, building that agency since 2016.
It's crazy because I started this, it's funny listening to this story that you have, because mine is essentially the kind of a carbon copy, kind of. I started out, I'm 42, and I ended up working at a tire store for 11 years because I flunked out of college the first time. Then I hurt my knee, and then I went back to college and actually did really well. Got a bachelor's.
I tore my ACL, PCL, meniscus, by the way. That's a fun one. So I don't know what you did to your knee, but man, I shredded that.
So I've never had like the meniscus. I've torn meniscus, but yeah, I just had my knee replaced in November because I had no cartilage left in it.
Good luck to you, man.
Yeah, it's not bad. I'm 42, so I prolonged it since I was 32. So that was kind of the nice thing. But I was in education. It was the same thing. It was like I got 2 degrees, one in both in education, and do nothing with them. I did it for 4 years, and it was one of those things. It was like, it was kind of a waste of money, but everything that I do, I feel like there's reasoning behind it, and it made me a better person. So
now, was it because you got into the field and you didn't like it, or you didn't get into the field? Or because like me, I got into the field and I'm like, this is crazy. I can't do this. Like, what was your kind of experience on it?
Well, so I was a PE teacher. I was a pretty good athlete in high school, and I thought I wanted to coach and I wanted to make a difference in lives, because that's kind of what defined me. I had a really good football coach in high school, and he was the guy who made me, a lot of the things that I do are because of him. And, I've read a couple books. Like I was listening to Score Takes Care of Itself the other day by Bill Walsh, and it's like if this book wasn't around when he was coaching, but he's doing a lot of the same things that Bill Walsh did. So you kind of know where those things come from. But, I showed up and I started teaching, and things were just different. I coached baseball, and I was a PE coach, and kids didn't have to dress down, and kids didn't have to get grades. Just like you said, we'll throw out the grading system. Let's not have a grading system because it hurts people's feelings. And you can't base education on that, because now we're teaching a bunch of kids that they don't have to do what they have to do. They don't have to
This
learn.
is kind of like the single biggest thing I find myself like talking about in conversations right now. Like I've had 4 conversations like in the last 2 days about this, like just podcast personally. Like education is so backwards right now, man. Like if you look at it, like we're educating kids in the wrong things, or educating them nothing at all to pass a test, because the tests are what teachers' salaries are based on, and blah blah blah. And it's like, number one, like that shouldn't be the case for teachers, because it doesn't show that the kids can do something, so it sucks for them, right? But at the same time, like we're getting kids that come out of school that like they can't do anything. You know what I mean? So it's like,
know how to do this.
That's a whole other can of worms. Oh yeah. Hold on. Let me take a picture of myself. Like, but it's like, if you look at it, like, I think the trades have had it right for a really long time, like, because they have this period of an apprenticeship, and that's where you work under somebody to get the skills. And it also works as, a period of discernment. Like, oh my God, I love being a plumber. This is incredible. I could see myself doing this. Or, dear God, I could not do this for another 20 years. So it helps you to do that, but also get the skills. We kind of need that after high school and between college, because you'll find that probably 80% of people won't go to college because they'll find the career they don't need to go to college to do.
Yeah, and education.
So anyway, I digress. Sorry, I took you off the path here.
You're right on it. We're right on the same thing, because I think that, like you said, we know that as teachers, we got that in the field experience when you student taught, right? That's when you learn the most. You didn't learn the most from sitting in classes and listening to someone tell you how to do something. You learned it by doing that, and like putting in that system that allows kids to be successful is really what it takes. But when you're getting that taken away, because like you said, teachers they get paid based on their performance, and their performance is based on test scores. And when you do that, there are kids who don't care, because their grade isn't based on that test score. Their grade is based on what they do in your classroom. So they can walk in and they can take that test and just push a button, and not care. And then your job can
it's unfair on both sides. It's unfair on both sides, because like as a teacher, like you're your salary or your livelihood shouldn't be dependent on like if a group of kids can pass a test, because that test doesn't tell me like are they proficient, are they able to do it. It just tells me they memorized something or they learned how to take a test. Because it's also a skill to how to take a test.
Right. Yeah, and that's exactly. I mean, I'm going to tell you right now. That's how I got through college. Was I a bad teacher? No, I was a very good teacher, but I learned how to pass that test because that's all you had to do. You had to figure out how to pass the test. You had to fill in the right squares and check those boxes, and then you get a piece of paper that's worth a lot of money, but not really.
Well, and that's what's interesting about like I have like a history education, as I mentioned. Like that's what I did in grad school. Like that, the thing that's kind of interesting about that is you don't have tests. You have many long ass papers. Right. So like you have to show that that's the, as I said, I don't really, I guess in some ways I do use it because like I was watching something today and it was like they were talking about something political and I was like, Emperor Caracalla did that 1,000 years ago and I could tell you what happened because of that. But like I had to actually show that I knew something, you know what I mean, and understood a concept and had to explain it, and that's how I got graded.
Yeah. I think I kind of know the answer to this, but I want to just kind of hear your take on it because you talked about it a little bit. College was something that, and I'm not sure how old you are, but I'm 42, but I feel like
I'm 35.
35.
So I'm not, I'm like not that much younger than you. We're in a similar decade, I guess.
Yeah, and we were still in that era, like when I feel like it was like George W., Barack Obama, a little bit of Clinton was, everyone needs to go to college, so we're going to make this so everyone can go to college. And now everyone's gone to college and they can't find a job. I mean, and you and I have both been down that road. It's like, hey, let's go to college, let's figure it out. And the necessity of it is not that big. I mean, would you have done it again?
So here's the thing I did. So here's the I have two different viewpoints on this, and there's one I'll mention. Like, I guess in some ways, I love all the knowledge I got in school and in grad school and everything else. I hate the debt that I had to pay off it at an exorbitant rate. That was kind of crazy. But like, I still am actually friends with the professors I had then. Like, I still like. I discovered podcasting because of a professor, like things like that. But then I look at it on the other side, and it's like, I think for most people, I probably could have done it with or without college because everything I'm doing now, like, I don't need it, right? Like I'm self-taught. Like I think if you look at a lot of successful people, their best teacher's experience. It's things they've done. And I think there's too much attention on like, what degrees do you have, where have you went to school, whatever it may be, because the issue we're running into right now is, number one, there's too much easy money for school. And if you want to start a business, you can't get that same money.
Right.
And because of that, everybody went to undergrad, when I was in college. Then what happened? Well, to separate yourself, everybody goes to grad school. Okay, well, now everybody's went to grad school. What do you do now? Well, I guess you get a PhD, right? Like it becomes like a battle of like degrees. And I feel like college now is kind of like what high school used to be, if that makes sense. It kind of feels like at certain points it's almost unnecessary because some of these things they could have been educated differently and earlier in life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, that makes a lot of sense because I think that the fact of the matter is that we just keep adding to it, and you can do a lot of the things that with a degree that you don't have to have a degree. I remember when my dad was, my dad did finish high school, but he started college and didn't finish that. He went into, he told us, hey, don't ever go into manual labor because that's what he did, because you're going to be stuck in it forever or you're not going to get any further. Well, he was one of those people who started out as a mechanic working for a guy in a grape vineyard and worked on tractors and things like that. And then the guy saw that he was such a good worker that he made him a supervisor. And then he became a supervisor of another place. And I mean, moved along, didn't have a degree, but all the skills that he learned doing all those things, to me, he should have an honorary degree. I mean, he has got that life experience and those things that all those people do. And I bet you he could have passed every single class that they offered just by getting the experience. And so,
what's interesting is my dad was quite similar, actually. He started in the machine shop at a company, and like the company would like offer these oh, there's going to be a Dale Carnegie course here. Who wants to take it? Everybody would be like, well, that's stupid. I'm not going to take it. My dad would be like, oh, that sounds like a good opportunity. I got nothing to do this weekend. Let me go do that. So every time they offered something free, he took it. And by the time he realized that, he started becoming more different than the people he worked with, and all of a sudden he was their boss. Like you take opportunities where you can get them, man.
Right. And I mean, it's really dependent on how hard you want to work. I think that a lot of people, like, you want to be a teacher, you want to be a doctor, you want to be a lawyer, you have to go to school to figure that out. if you're going to do something different, like a trade skill or whatever, you don't have to do that. I mean, I started out making $38,000 a year as a teacher, and making.
Oh, you made a lot more than me, man. I made $18,000 a year teaching when I first got out of school.
What state was that in?
It's New Jersey, and it's private school, which is not much better than indentured servitude. So, like private school, like they charge a lot, but they pay the teachers very little, and they expect you to work double the number of hours.
It's still crazy though. Like, I mean, you're talking about like, I need to find a job where I can make $100,000. I would never make $100,000 teaching. Never.
No.
Because it maxes out at 78,000 here, and you get $1,000 a year. And if you get your master's, you'll make 5,000 more than what the standard bachelor's will get you. And it's just like, it would have never been that way. And I got the paper for my master's degree, and a couple days later, I was like, I'm done. Not doing this anymore. It's not worth it.
Yep.
I'm never going to be able to have more than what I have by doing this. It's going to be stuck with it. If I coach, I could make $2,000 more for spending, months on end coaching, and it just wasn't worth it. So the hardest part is like kind of betting on yourself. Like when you said that you just quit school, I mean, you kind of had a little different. If you're making $18,000 a year, it's like, well, what do I got to lose? That's
that's the thing. I'm looking at it, and I got friends that like at that point in time, like I have a different class of friend now. But like at that point in time, I had friends that were working at like Burger King, and they're like, yeah, I make $25,000 a year, and I'm like, dude, I'm working 120 hours a week with kids throwing projectiles at me, and like I make 18 grand. Like, what the hell, man?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like there's never anything. So you have to decide like whether you want to. I mean, it's kind of like, I'm sure you've read Rich Dad Poor Dad, but it's like, you decide if you're going to live with something. And I had this conversation with my wife the other day. It's like, you decide if you're going to live with something where you have an opportunity to stay at the same level your whole life, have a good retirement, have, all those things, but never be any further than what you are. Or you decide that you're going to bet on yourself, and you're going to hope that whatever you do, you put as much of everything you have into it, and you make more. And it became I switched from a guaranteed thing to a 100% commission job. Now I'm a salesman, and I'm going to make way more money than I've ever made before. I mean, it depends. You have to be willing to take that risk. And I don't think a lot of people are willing.
Well, it's even that, like, you have to be able to risk like good enough for like what you could have. Like I knew even the first version of the company I have now, was called Get Featured Media, and we had another partner, and like we weren't really like getting along. Like, he wanted to make the company an app, and I think the human touch is important. I really want to keep it more of an agency style and things like that. So it was really hard to quit that. And I was making like no money at that point in time, which is funny because I was still making like, close to 100 grand, which is way more than that $18,000 I was talking about. I was like, well, this is the most I've ever made in my life. Can I quit this? What can I do? So, I quit, and we started the agency we have now, and it's way better. We're making way more money than I've ever made in my life. I'm making more impact. I'm having, more fun with my family. But at the same time, like I had to look at that situation, like this is the most money I've ever made in my life. Like, can I cut this off? Right. Like, and if you look at that, like you wouldn't have anything you had now.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's crazy because, like we were looking at like our first house that we bought, and we're looking at $114,000 home, and that's what we bought in Idaho. It was a really good price at the time. Now it's crazy because so many people are moving here from California and Washington and all these surrounding states.
God bless you, man. Those Californians tend to bring everything with them. They can just stay there. But anyway.
I have my own thoughts on that.
My friends in Texas are like, when we meet people from California, we say, great, go back.
Yeah. That's kind of the thing. Like I made a post on TikTok the other day that like I have a hard time because my whole message is positivity. It's like you can find a positive thing in anything that there is, and those people are leaving.
Absolutely.
I was born there, but I moved here when I moved to Ontario, Oregon, which is across the border. It's like 60 miles away. When I was 10 years old, and I was thinking about it, it's like I didn't have a choice in that. And you're bashing these people, and this is just, and I'm not. That's kind of what the thing is, though. It's like these Californians, that's all it is. And it's like, think about those kids that are here against their choice. Like they wanted to stay there. They
absolutely.
wanted to leave. They didn't want to leave their friends. I mean, I think about myself as a 10-year-old kid. It's like the number one important thing is my family's here, my friends are here. These are the people that I interact with. I don't really care about.
It's the same reason I'm still in New Jersey, right? Like I don't agree with a lot of things here, but dude, I love it here. My family's here. You know what I mean? It's the reason I haven't left.
Right. And that's the thing. It's those poor kids they're here and they're going into school every single day and they're hearing from these damn Californians. It's like it drives me nuts. It's like it's not really. I get it. They're here because they want a better life, but they do. You're right.
Yeah.
There are some that bring that stuff with them, and that's that's not what we're looking for. But we can't sit there and just totally tear them.
No, you can't kind of make a blanket statement on that. But that was in jest, so I apologize if I
no, and I'm
anyone
not.
on that.
Again, like I said, it's funny that we're talking about that because it's right in what I'm. It's one of those deals. Like I've invested a lot of time into TikTok because I like these little short videos that I can just say whatever I want, and I don't. It's unscripted. It's funny. I follow Gary Vee, and he's did something today. It's like the most thing that people do is they just don't do it. Like that's the biggest problem with growing anything is they don't do it. And I posted something like something about the new trend is this is a new trend, just like being from Idaho, and it's got like over 10,000 views, and it's going and going and going, and people are commenting, and then I get like 3 or 4 people are like, "We're full." Someone tagged me in a video today, and it said, "Stay the F out," and it was a picture of Idaho,
Wow.
and they tagged me because of the post that I made, and I was just like, man, this is just, I don't know. I mean, it's tough. I get it. Some of them are coming out of there because they don't want to be there, but you're right. Don't bring that because remember why you came here, right? And I'm sure.
Yeah,
I think. Same way.
Yeah, I think that can be the difficult thing of it as well, because I think, I think in a lot of areas, like as a country, like we're charged up in a lot of ways. And I think like when that happens, it gets difficult to like have conversations and figure out like, well, this is what I think, this is what you think, where's the middle ground? Like we've lost middle ground. And I think that's really, really tough because then you kind of refuse to see the other person's viewpoint.
Right.
And I feel like as an interviewer, that is the single skill I've worked on the most. Is trying to figure out how to ask questions from the viewpoint of the person I'm sitting across from.
Right.
Because when you do that, you can actually learn a lot about people, man. It's pretty incredible. But I think we've started to lose that. And, the sad part is I think social media has made it even worse, right? Like, because when you were growing up and I was growing up, like, people believe certain things, right or left or whatever. And I think we just kind of hung out with our neighbors. Now it's like really hard. And I think we've been kind of charged up by all the what we consume every day.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. I think that what happens is that it's all in the forefront now, right? Because there's an easy way to make it in the forefront. And the funny thing about it is that you see, because back to that post, there was like 3 people who did this, but there's, 1,000 people who are like, I'm from here and proud, blah, blah, blah. It's the same thing with the state of the country. That's where we're at right now. It's we
can't have a conversation. That's how you don't solve anything, man.
You're wearing a hat right now, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you see this. But like if you're listening on the podcast, you're wearing a hat with the United States flag on it. That's something that I'm proud of, right?
Yeah.
But if you, it's almost like I've walked into rooms where people say that makes me ashamed to see that flag, and it's like, are you kidding me?
But it's even that is it's weird because just like wearing the hat, people think it's a political statement. It's like, no, it's just where I live, man. I love my country.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is. It's like this. We were taught that. To salute the flag. This is our flag. This is who we are. This is our country. We're proud of who we are. And you can't have the rights and the things that you have without that flag because that was the symbol of this country when it started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you mentioned a little bit earlier, and this is on my mind.
I feel like I took you on a long wormhole there, man.
No, we're good. I honestly, like, when I was listening to the 5 minutes that I was listening, I was like, this is exciting because you are a podcaster. This is what you do. You interview people just like I do. And obviously you've been doing it for a lot longer. So you're pretty damn good at it. You're a good interviewer.
Oh, thanks, man.
Enjoy actually having a good conversation with someone. So not that I haven't had good conversations with other ones, but.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. Like somebody that can kind of keep up with you in some ways.
Yep, exactly. You had mentioned earlier that your professor was who brought you into podcasting. What does he think about you doing this for a living instead of teaching?
Oh, he loves it because he's not teaching anymore either. He's a great dude. And like he got passed over for tenure, which I thought was crazy because he was the teacher everybody loved. Everybody took his classes. There was never enough of his classes to take. There was always like a waiting list to take them because like you got like, and number one, he was just cool. It was like having Neil Patrick Harris teach you history. Because the guy was hilarious, and you like felt like you got out. You're like, wow, I understand this. Like I loved history, but I loved it even more because of that teacher. So he actually started his own tourism company where he takes people like to different countries and tells them the history of it and stuff. I know like COVID kind of made it a little bit harder to do that. But I don't know because we talk from time to time. I don't know if he's back doing any teaching now, but I know like he had left the profession for a while.
I think that's interesting because my guess, just listening to that is that because this is the way that I feel like I left teaching, but I'm still teaching. This is teaching to me. Your podcast is teaching. I'm guessing to you.
In the way I wanted to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And he's probably teaching those people in his tourist company about the places that he's going and what they're doing, right? I mean, that would be my guess. If he's taking people, is that what he's doing?
Yeah, he would take them on trips and he'd be like, all right, so we're going to go to southern France and we're going to learn all about, the Languedoc and, like the French and Spanish culture because like they're kind of intertwined there. It's like, yeah, he's a cool dude.
Yeah. And that's what I like about it is like, I started out doing my podcast, like in the beginning, it was called, what would we call it? I can't remember what we called it, but it was going to be interview like local businesses and that's what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And then I realized that I was just being inspired by these entrepreneurs and these people like yourself who are doing this and they're making something. And I just decided, you know what? We're going to change it. We're going to talk about how they got there, what it is to them, because I mean, in your own way, you are successful. Success isn't created by me or you. Well, it is created by me. My success is, your success is created by you. And that's really what it boils down to.
Well, and I think that's what's really interesting, like in the personal development world, because I have a couple different viewpoints on this. I think when you're early on, like you kind of need a lot of that stuff, right? Because maybe you need some confidence or you kind of don't know where you're going. But I think at a certain point, you realize that stuff's more like rah-rah. Like I am a big believer of you do get what you put your attention on, and like if you put your attention on positive things, you'll get more positive things. Like yes, that's to an extent. But I think at the same time, like I think people forget about the action component. Like you can keep going to every conference, you can read every book, you can do everything, but unless you do anything, unless you take any action, you're it's like that's where you get the most. Like I've learned the most from running a business and having to learn how to hire and having to learn man, why does the government tax me at such a level that I could actually hire 2 more people in employment tax? Like learning all these things that I need to know in order to run a business. I've learned so much more from that stuff and doing it than I did like going to these conferences and stuff like that. But I think, as I said early on, I think you need it. But I think for some people, it becomes like almost an addiction, right? Like it's almost like their alcoholism or something like that, where they can't put it down.
Yeah, well, and I think that's a great point because I think that what happens, like you said, is like for me, this is how it was for me. At first, it was like, I'm listening to Gary Vee and he's telling me, do this, do this, do this, and then now I'm starting to take the action. And once you start taking that action, I listen to podcasts all the time. I listen to the same 2 or 3 every single day, but I used to listen to 20 of them. And I used to go and say, hey, you listen to mine, tell me what you think. I'll listen to yours, you tell me what you think. And then you find that group and you narrow it down. And now you're around all these people who are telling you what the quality is, what they would do differently. But you're not like seeking out 20 books for how to podcast because now you have a pretty good understanding of it and you're starting to niche it down and narrow it down and figure out what you need to do to make it better.
Yeah, and I think, as I said, at a certain point, like you're still always educating yourself, right? Because if you ever stop, like that's just stupid. Like you should be educating yourself, but I think you don't reach for as much because number one, you get to a certain point and you realize, okay, like these books are great, but what person can I find that's going to help me cut the learning curve, right? Like who can I hire? What can I do to cut the learning curve? Whether it's a coach, whether it's a consultant, whatever it may be. I think that's one part of it. I think the other part about it is you get to a certain point and you learn from your own mistakes, like or what you've done right or what you've done wrong, and things like that.
Yeah, and I think that that's a lot of things. Like that's what I like about like what I'm posting, on TikTok is like I think that what this is for me, what it's turned into for me is it's a learning experience. It's to help that person take that first step, like you were talking about. No action, nothing happens. Take the action, write it down, start moving forward, start doing those things. And then you end up finding out, like I read 20 books in the beginning of this whole situation where I started to get myself down the line. And I realized that it's great to read these books over and over again. But guess what? All 20 books pretty much have the same message. Do it.
Yeah.
That's all there is
to it. That's the main reason I had a book come out in June called Unremarkable to Extraordinary. That's the main reason I wrote it because I just got so frustrated with every single personal development book in there. And I think in the book, I say, this is the last personal development book I want you to read. Because like, I wanted to show people like it takes action. It's ugly. It's bloody. It's sweaty. It's whatever it is. It's going to get you there. For some people, it's a really long time. For others, it's not. You know, like I'm a Green Bay Packers fan, lifelong, but I'm a huge Tom Brady fan. And this is why. You know, you look at him and, you know, Juniper Serra High School in California, barely starts his senior year. University of Michigan, he competes with Drew Henson because Drew Henson couldn't figure out if he wanted to play for the Yankees or not his senior year. Then he gets drafted in the 6th round, only plays because Drew Bledsoe literally almost dies on the field when Mo Lewis hit him. I don't think anybody actually realized how serious that injury was. Yeah. And he gets to play. You know why? Because he watched film for hours. He learned throwing techniques for hours. And I think people don't see the value in that stuff, right?
Right.
You look at like most first round draft picks, there's very few of them that pan out. There's very few of them that are, you know, number one overall picks or people like that, like, you know, Ryan Leaf or somebody like that. Right. But you look at like Peyton Manning, and I think, he's number 2 the year he was drafted in 98. But you look at somebody like that and he's actually like an outlier because he actually got all the experience of his dad, Archie, being on all these terrible teams for years. There's so much value in learning from losing because when you're the best all the time and your whole life, people have told you that they're the best and, oh, you're so awesome, you're so great and everything else. Well, you get to the NFL, everybody's good. You know what I mean? It's then what do you have in your heart and what do you have in your head that's going to make you better?
And that's super important. I mean, I listened to Tom Brady on an interview and I was just like, man, this guy he's like Michael Jordan. It's the same thing. It's like you have a choice. You can be, and I'm not a fan of LeBron, but you look at LeBron. LeBron pulls in all these people around him to make his team better. And Michael Jordan.
I saw a great meme about that recently. They had a side-by-side with Jordan and him, and it was like, number of max contract players around him, and it was like LeBron had like 3, Jordan had none. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like you surround those people. I mean, you look at Brady. Brady went to Tampa Bay and won the Super Bowl, the second season he was there? Because he took the people around him and elevated them up to his level, and they wanted to work like him, and they wanted to be like him, and guess what happens? Same thing with Jordan. He elevates those people. Pippen was good, right? He made Pippen better. Mm-hmm. Horace Grant was good. He made Horace Grant better. He wasn't hanging out. He wasn't taking. Well, I don't know. I read Scottie Pippen's book, and he says that he would take.
Yeah, they don't get along now, from what I've heard. I don't know. So,
but yeah.
But it's interesting, right? Because you look at world class players, and they make other people better. And I think that's what it really says. Like, yeah, LeBron's a great individual player, but there's a reason he doesn't have 7 championships. You know, right. There's a reason. Is it 6 or 7 Jordan has? I know he's got somewhere in that range, but I'm saying there's a reason he doesn't have that many when you look at it. I'm a huge Yankees fan, right? You look at somebody like Garrett Cole, great individual performer, but I'll tell you what, when that Yankees team got good, when they went out and got Anthony Rizzo, because Anthony Rizzo makes everybody around him better. And I think that is the type of players you need in your locker room, on the field, on the team.
Right. Yeah, I'm a huge Giants fan, so I get what you're saying. Like, I mean, Hunter Pence on the Giants when he was there, it was just like, it's a different team. They elevate and they bring that in, and people.
Hunter Pence brought heart and soul to every single game. DJ LeMahieu is a similar guy. He's going to get on base somehow. He doesn't care if you got to hit him. He doesn't care if he's got to hit you. He doesn't care, because that is when people see you play like that. That's why. Was it 2 years ago? Aaron Boone benched Gleyber Torres for a week because the guy didn't run out of thing to first base. He goes, I can't have other people seeing that. Leadership works hard all the time.
Right, exactly. And that's what I loved about – that was the one thing, like, I would tell kids when I was coaching baseball about Hunter Pence. It's like, look at this guy. He's goofy. He runs funny. He swings funny. But if he hits the ball –
He doesn't wear batting gloves.
I mean, he's an odd duck. But guess what?
Yeah.
He busts his ass, and that's what gets him where it's at. And I think that people don't see, and that's kind of what I'm kind of leading into, is that people see where you're at now. People see where I'm at now. Obviously, I would say that in the podcasting world, you're just a little bit more successful than me, but I started down low, and you started down low, and you made mistakes, and you had failures, and it didn't just turn into this.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting. Like, I'm a baseball super fan, so I compare everything to sports. Yeah. I had a conversation with, he was my favorite player when he played for the Yankees, Nick Swisher. I had a conversation with him last year. Yeah. And he's a guy, like, always works hard, always positive. His dad, Steve, was a first-round pick, the St. Louis Cardinals in the 70s. And so Nick, coming out of high school, like, he thought he was going to be, like, his dad was drafted in the first round. Why wouldn't he be?
Right.
And guess what? Nobody picked him. Nobody picked him out of high school. So his whole world blew up. And his dad said to him, all right, you going to quit or are you going to figure this out? And Nick ended up working his ass off and then becoming a first round pick after 4 years at Ohio State University. But like, dude, sometimes you need to be humbled a little bit.
Yeah, I love Nick Swisher. I watched him play, so I was at a game when he was on the A's, and yeah, he's an awesome dude. That's awesome.
He just has fun playing the game, and he put heart and soul in the field every single game, man. Like that's how people should play.
Yeah, and it's funny because you think about when you talk about being a Yankees fan, like I always think about all the fun being taken out of it when you become a Yankee because like Swish was long hair, big beard. Yeah. He goes to the Yankees, like boom, what
mutton
happened?
chops.
Yeah. He's gone. Where'd he go? But yeah, I mean, and so let's talk a little bit about what you got going on now because you have your own media company. You said you wrote a book. How many books have you written? Is it just the one, or do you have a couple?
This is my first. It took me a long time to kind of get to this point because, and I'm a big believer if you don't have anything to say, don't say anything. Right. So like I finally got to the point where I thought this needed to be done. You know, like it'd been done a lot, but I was very, very excited about like having a unique viewpoint on it. And I've gotten to speak to a lot of really cool people, you know, like Nick Swisher, like Johnny Damon, you know, Hall of Fame basketball players, baseball players, Brian Dawkins, really cool guy. So I got to like learn from a lot of these really cool people. And I'm like, you know, like if you look at it, the biggest thing about them is they bust their ass. Right. They work hard. And I think a lot of people think that, you know, like, as I said, you look in the mirror and you say, I'm going to be successful and you work a little bit and you're going to get there. And it's like, for a lot of these guys, like they're watching film when you're sleeping. Like Luke Kuechly that used to play for the Carolina Panthers. His first 3 years in the NFL after coming out of Boston College, he didn't have a TV in his apartment. Why? Because he would have his laptop open watching film all the time so he could see plays before they're going to happen. And I think that's the biggest thing is I wanted to show people is it is about hard work and consistency and sure, making your own opportunities, right? You need to make those sometime, but we also need to be prepared when that opportunity comes. There's an Abraham Lincoln quote where he says, I will prepare, my day will come. You don't know when it's going to be, right? Like you don't know when it's going to happen, but if you're not ready, you're going to miss it. And what if you only get one of those shots in your life? Then it's over. So I think it's about, you need to show people it's about hard work, it's about consistency, self-education, and really understanding as an entrepreneur, you need to be able to see 6 months ago, 6 weeks ago, 6 weeks from now, and 6 months from now, all at the same time, because you need to be able to think with how am I going to grow this company? So I wanted to be able to share that with people.
Yeah. So tell us what the book is called and where we can find it.
Yeah, it's called Unremarkable to Extraordinary, and they can get it over at getextraordinarybook.com. So a lot of really, really cool stuff in there, and I tried to keep it concise, so it's only 168 pages, and we've gotten some incredible feedback about it. So I'm just really excited to get it out there.
That's awesome. That's a very short read, but the fact of the matter is, like we were talking about, you know, you mentioned Dale Carnegie, Napoleon Hill, Gary Vee. I mean, there's all these people that people read those books when they're going somewhere and they're trying to figure it out. Like you talked about, self-help, motivation, you know, that kind of type of situation. But in reality, they are good reminders if you needed to hear it more than once. But at some point, you have to do the work, and you know, that's really what it boils down to.
Absolutely.
So where do you see what's going on with you in the future? Where do you see this going? I mean, you're obviously doing pretty well. You're successful. You wrote a book. You've got a really good podcast. Where do we see this going?
Right now, we're working on some other stuff behind the scenes with the book, which I'm really excited about, and we're gonna talk about that probably in another like 30 to 60 days. So that's cool. So really, I just focused on growing the brand. You know, I got 2 little girls, so you know, my wife and I are just having as much fun with them as possible. We live on, I wouldn't quite call it a farm, but it's kind of a farm. You know, we have 30 chickens, bunch of roosters, pig, all that fun stuff. And, you know, we're teaching them responsibility by having them feed the animals and, you know, handle some bumblefoot. And we had to cut down a tree that fell in the barn yesterday. So it's like, you know, just living life and trying to set the best example I can.
That's awesome that you're sharing that type of stuff with them. Did you grow up on acreage, or were you like in the middle of the city, or is this something that...
So I've grown up in, like, when people think of New Jersey, my experience isn't what most people think of New Jersey. They think of, like, you know, Jersey City and, like, you know, Jersey Shore. And it's like, I live in the side where it's kind of like living in Pennsylvania or Ohio. Wow. Like, it's very rural around here. I didn't grow up on a ton of acreage, but every weekend my dad had me working on his best friend's farm. So I was, cutting hay, planting stuff. So it's like, it's been how I was raised. And I think it's good to have that responsibility. He had me have a paper route at 11 years old. So it's like, I've always had hard work as part of how I was raised.
Right. It's awesome because like I grew up on a 6 acres. We didn't have like animals or anything like that, but we had 6 acres and we were out doing stuff like building fence and we had sheep and stuff like that. We'd do 4-H and things like that. But I moved away. I'm like, I hate this. I don't want to live because we were like 7 miles from town and I wanted to go play basketball or I wanted to go to practice or whatever. I'd have to drive. It was so far to drive. It wasn't that far. And now living in the city, I'm like, that's it. We're buying property with acreage because I'm tired of this. It's like, I don't want to touch the houses next to me.
Well, it's interesting though, because I think like, as a kid, you're kind of like, oh, I want the big lights in the city and everything else. And as kind of like life changing, you become more into like a family. You're kind of like, I get why my parents did this. Like, I think like you kind of get to a certain point where you look at that,
Right. Man, it's been awesome having you on here. Where's the best place to find you? Is it your website? Is there, where do we want to people?
They can check me out over at commandyourbrand.com, or if they are really interested in learning more about kind of the podcast space and how they can get a lot out of that, we put together a really great white paper for them called The 7 Reasons You're Not Getting Featured in Your Favorite Podcast. And they can get that over at crushitonpodcast.com. And if they do podcast or podcasts, it'll still work. So crushitonpodcast.com.
That's awesome, man. Well, hey, thanks for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it. I really enjoy the conversation. I think, we kind of got off to, it's been a few, I haven't done a podcast. I haven't done an episode in like 2 weeks. So I was like, oh man, he's probably like, I'm botching the interview. But
no, I actually see, I enjoy because here's the thing is I have a tendency to like, you show me a rabbit hole, I'm going to go down that rabbit hole. Right. So I like it when a host isn't like, no, get away from the rabbit hole. I enjoy the rabbit holes. So like you let me do some rabbit holes today and I had fun.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I definitely would like to have you back on in, 6-7 months or 6 months to a year or something like that and see where you're at because I love the path is similar. I'm at a different end of that than you are and I can't wait to get where you are and see where you are.
Well, man. Well, thanks for having me.
Yep. All right. Well, everyone, I wanted to say thanks again to Jeremy. Go ahead and follow him. Check out his book. I'm going to get that right away here and see what you got there because I want to read it. It's 168 pages. That's a shorty, so we can make that happen.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, until next time, everyone, I wanted to say thank you. I challenge you to find the shape of your success.